Hello, students. One of you asked a great question related to the project that I had provided some examples of one variable equations and one variable inequalities, and two variable equations and two variable inequalities. And I did not actually give you an example of a system of equations or a system of inequalities word problem, and that might be helpful. So I'm going to give an example of a system of equations first, and then I'll give a system of inequalities second. I'm just kind of thinking of things off the top of my head. I just had some music on, and there was some piano music in there. And so I thought maybe I could make a system of equations about the keys on a piano. And if I remember correctly, maybe I'm wrong, but if I remember correctly, there's 88 keys on the piano. And so I came up with this situation where you have your left hand starting at the very bottom of the piano and playing a chromatic scale, which means it's playing each and every note. And so let's write that down, that the left hand starts on the lowest key, which is an A key, and plays an ascending, it's going up, chromatic scale. And then let's say that your right hand starts on the highest key, which is a C, and plays a descending, and let's not do a chromatic scale, that's not super interesting. Maybe a descending scale, skipping every other key. So if you know anything about music, that won't be the prettiest scale because it doesn't obey sort of the pattern where you have whole steps and half steps, but we're going to make it work that way just to make the equations both linear. That's just kind of a detail we'll ignore. And so then the question for the system of equations is just, when will the two hands meet? And what I can do here is set up an equation, and we're also I should mention another assumption that they play at the same tempo. Otherwise, you can't answer the question. But if we're assuming that each hand plays one key at the same tempo, and then when will they meet? So let's write an equation for the red situation, the left hand. So the left hand starts on the lowest key. Let's call that key number 0. So the left hand starts on a 0 and plays a chromatic scale. So it plays one key per beat and starts on key number 0. The right hand starts on the highest key, which would be key number 88. So I know it's a plus 88. And it's descending. And when things are going down, we have a negative involved, just like a negative slope goes down to the right. And it skips every other key. So we're going to write down a slope of negative 2x like this. And then this is a system of equations because I have two different equations in two different variables. And I should make sure to define what those two variables are. And so y is the key number, whatever key you are on, and x is the beat number. So when x is equal to 0, you can see that the red equation is at key number 0. And then when x is 0, the blue equation is at key number 88. And actually, now that I'm thinking about it, I guess I shouldn't call it key number 0 because then that would mean there's 89 keys. So I think this is one of those situations where maybe we should have a y-intercept of 1 here for the red equation. That way, the first key is the A at the bottom there. So if you plug in x equals 0 for beat number 0, the left hand is on key number 1 and the right hand is on key number 88. Okay, so then let's use substitution here Substitution is where we take the red equation and substitute this version of the letter y for that version right there in the blue equation. So 1x plus 1 is equal to negative 2x plus 88. As we solve this, like usual, we want to get our x's to hang out together. Remember, that's good algebra advice, bad relationship advice. Add 2x, because that's the opposite of the x's on the right side. Not that you need to move them to the left side, but you need to get them on the same side, whatever side makes you happier. Then I'm going to move the numbers to the other side because you don't want your x to have your number. So you have 3x is equal to 87. And then you divide both sides by 3 to get x is equal to, what is that, 29? I believe so. So x is equal to 29. That's half of the answer. I take my x is equal to 29 and I substitute it back into both of the equations. You can do either one. It's good to do it in both equations. So I'm going to use red just to demonstrate the red equation. So then the y value equals 1 times 29 plus 1. That means that your left hand is going to be on the 30th key. Same idea with the blue equation. Y equals negative 2 times 29 plus 88. What does that make? 58, I believe. Negative 58 plus 88, and luckily that works out also to y equals 30. So that means that after 29 beats, both hands have come together on the 30th key from the bottom of the keyboard. So there's an example of a system of equations, and I solved it using substitution. You should also graph your solution. So I'm going to go back up here, and oops, I didn't mean to delete the, that's okay, we'll make it work. The red equation was y equals 1x plus 1. Go ahead and make that red so it matches up with what we had before. And the blue equation was y equals negative 2x plus 88. Make that blue so it matches up with what we had before. You can't see them both right now. I need to zoom out because the scale was too far zoomed in. And you can see, just like before, that when x is equal to 29, they are both on key number 30 on the piano. So I solved it algebraically, and then here would be the graph that you draw along with its solution. If I wanted to take this same problem and adapt it into a system of inequalities, I would just change the question. I would change the questions to something about being above or being below. And so I could ask something like, maybe this represents part of the music, but there's another part where you play a note in between the two keys. So maybe we could change this, and this might be a little bit of a bad example, but I'll try to make it work. As you play your two scales, you also strike a key key that is above your chromatic scale. Remember, that's the red line. And below your descending scale. When is this possible? And this is something that happens quite often in music. There's some different pieces that I play that you have sort of things that you're doing with your hands, and you're also doing some sort of jumping towards the middle to play a third melody or a counterpoint along with what's going on with the other hands. And so what's really important when you're writing an inequality is to think of words like greater than or less than, or you can use more direction words like above and below. And so what I'm going to do now is just change the equations that I already have and change them into inequalities. And so we need to be above the chromatic scale. And so I'm going to go back to my red equation, which represents the chromatic scale, and switch it to a greater than, because I said you have to be above that. And similarly, I'm going to take my descending scale, which has the negative slope, and change that to a less than, so you have to be below that. One other piece here that I would like you to add in, which is that this only makes sense as you play the scales, which means that x should be greater than or equal to 0. And this leads me with a triple shaded region here. I could even add in a couple other inequalities. This is sort of going a little bit above and beyond. But you could say 0 is less, 1 is less than or equal to y, because we have the first key. We can't go below that. That'd be going off the piano. And that's less than or equal to 88 as well. And what you can see is there's one area that has been shaded by all of the inequalities. That is this sort of area that I'm darkening right here. Any point within this shaded region is a solution to all of the inequalities I said. So for example, this point right here, let's see, this point right here looks like 10, 40. And what that means is that after 10 beats, you could strike the 40th key on the piano, and you would be playing a key that is above your chromatic scale and below your descending scale. And there are, of course, many other points and keys that you could do within there. So I hope that's helpful to see some systems of equations and some systems of inequalities and how you can adapt something that you already have to make a new word problem that's related to it. If you have any other questions, please ask. I'm happy to make more videos. Thanks.